Welcome back to Story Corner. Today I'm going to tell you a story, you might call it a fairy tale. It's actually one you're probably going to recognise by another name, although there are some big differences. You'll understand what I mean once I get going. So this is a story of a family with two daughters. One was fair and kind and the other was just downright nasty. Unfortunately, it was the evil daughter that happened to be the favourite, while the kind-hearted lass, well, she was mistreated, worked to the bone and fed nothing but scraps by her parents. It wasn't a fair life for her, but even though she was being sent to look after the livestock every day, that was secretly her favourite chore. And that's because she had a fairy godmother in the herd. Well, what I really mean is she had a magical guardian cow. Now this special wee red calf had taken it upon itself to look after the girl. Every day the calf would lead the girl away from the rest of the herd to a secret house where he would feast on whatever her heart desired. Her family started to notice how much happier the girl seemed after tending to the cows, so her evil sister followed her one day. Once they discovered that the red calf was protecting her, they handed the girl an axe and they ordered her to kill it. Well, her heart was in her mouth. There was no way that she could kill her protector after everything it had done for her. But if she did it, who knew what her family would do to her? Imagine if her life got even worse. Staring into the red calf's eyes through her own tears, she suddenly knew there was only one option. With the axe in her hand, she spun around and chopped her sister's head off. Hopping on the calf's back, the pair fled into the woods, racing through the bushes and the thorns to safety. Her clothes were torn to shreds, but her fairy god coo made her a dress out of rushes. From then on, she became known as Rashin Coatie. Well, that's not the end of her story though. Even with the calf's help, Rashin Coatie, she still had to make a living. She managed to get a job at the nearby castle, but once again she was left to the dirtiest, the least attractive chores. When everybody else went to enjoy a service in church at Christmas, she was left behind in the kitchen. Now I know there are some people that might actually prefer that option, but regardless, even though she would love to go to church, she couldn't possibly be seen there wearing a dress made of rushes. Anyway, I mean, who would make the dinner if she wasn't there? Well, she tended the food while sobbing away, distraught at having left her unhappy life for one almost equally as miserable. The calf couldn't bear to see her so upset, so it surprised her with a magnificent dress and slippers fit for a princess, and gave her a promise that he would complete all the chores while she was gone. Well, Rashin Coatie rushed to the church. There's a wee tongue twister there. Rashin Coatie rushed to the church, and all eyes turned to see who was arriving so late. Now those eyes bulged from their sockets, and the jaws hit the floor at this beautiful woman sweeping into a pew at the back of the building. Nobody recognised her as just the lowly kitchen girl. The king's son, well, he turned around and he fell in love immediately. As soon as the service was finished, he raced to speak to the mysterious girl and found that Rashin Coatie was already gone. However, in her haste, she left behind one of her shoes. It was a lovely little delicate shoe. Ignore what's ever on my boot. The prince turned to the congregation and he declared that he was going to find a girl who this shoe fitted and he was going to marry her. I mean, this was the country's most eligible bachelor, so naturally dozens of girls were eager to try the shoe on and dupe him into marriage. However, this tiny shoe didn't fit a single one of them. Eventually, the prince found himself at a local wise woman's cottage. Now, she might have been wise, but she wasn't honest. That tiny shoe didn't have a hope of fitting onto her daughter's foot, but the wise woman would do anything to get into the royal household. Before the prince could move on, the mother discreetly sliced off part of her daughter's foot. Now, the shoe fitted perfectly. It was obvious this wasn't the elegant woman the prince had fallen for in the church, but he had made a public announcement. He refused to dishonour himself by going back on his words, so he reluctantly agreed to marry her. Word of the impending wedding spread, and Rashin Koti, well, she was crushed. She'd missed her chance of a happily ever after. The night before the ceremony, the wee red calf, he saw how sad the girl was once again, and knew something had to be done. He sent a wee bird to fly up to the prince's bedroom and deliver a message. The bird found its target, lying in bed while thinking about ways he could get out of this misguided nuptials. Then the prince heard a strange chirping. It was an odd song for a bird. It even seemed to have words. For some reason the lyrics, they kept telling him instead of chopped up bloody toes, you could find some bonny feet down in the kitchen. Confused but intrigued, the prince followed the little bird down from his lavish bedroom into the dark kitchens. And there, by the light of the fire, he found a vision of beauty hiding beneath a layer of soot, wearing a coat of rushes. He knew this was the girl he had vowed to marry, and he proved it with the lost shoe. The wedding celebrations were amended. The wise woman and her daughter were chased out of town for their deception, and Rashin Koti was happy at last. She hadn't forgotten who had made it all possible, though. A nice comfortable barn was built for the wee red calf, so he never had to be far away at all. And that is happily ever after. Sláinte.